What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to my channel, Hockey Talkie. This is the first of hopefully many videos I'm going to be able to make for you guys. But before I get going too far on this subject, I did want to give my respects to these five gentlemen: the Hockey Guy, Rob Talks Hockey, O Nyquist, Hockey Psychology, and Johnny Hockey. Now, if you're here, you've probably heard of these guys. If you haven't, I'd suggest you go check out their videos. If you like hockey, they all do their videos in their own unique way, and they're all awesome. I like all of them. I do want to say also I have a lot of respect for these guys. I am on probably my 80th or 90th, I don't know, take. So these videos do take a long time, and I do believe I'm doing mine probably one of the easier ways. So if you see their videos, just know if they're making a 3, 10, 12, 13-minute video, just know that it takes a very long time. And when they're asking you to like and subscribe, you just give them a little click for their 10, 15, 20, 40 hours work. That's awesome, and it means a lot, and they've been a huge inspiration to me. And now let's move forward. So that is Tony Danza for sure. What I want to say is that in the NHL, the big boss isn't the owner, it isn't the GM, it's actually the salary cap. The salary cap is what dictates what the GM and the ownership can do as far as signing players. And on the player side of it, yes, that cap is important. However, for them, most often the biggest component for them is taxes. Now, there's a third boss, and that is the agent. The agent is the one that's fighting for the player to get the most money, which actually pays the agent the most money. And if you're a bit of a fan of hockey, you've seen many times where either a player or a GM or an ownership group will say something like it's a business when they get traded, when they can't sign a player as a UFA, when a player leaves as a UFA to make more money in a different destination. It's a business, so business means math, and we got to look at a bit of the math here. So income taxes are the fine one pays for the crime of being useful and productive. So what I want you guys to think about moving forward is how much money these players actually pay in taxes. Again, it's going to get a bit mathy, but I promise I'm going to make this something that you're going to be able to digest. So one of the key components for any person, let alone a hockey player, is if they're going to move, they have to understand taxation, which a small component of it, well, actually a big component of it, is sales tax in the jurisdiction that they're going to go to. So as you can see here in the States, you guys can look this up on your own. I'm not going to read every number and drag this video out, but you can see here the ramifications for a player when they're trying to make a decision, or when an agent is explaining to them, hey, if you go here, this is what things are going to cost, along with the price of housing and whatnot. So this is an awesome tool that anyone can use. It's from Cardinal Point Athletic Advisors. And what I'm going to do here is just plug in some numbers so you can see. And what you're going to see from Anaheim to Calgary, the list goes all the way down, but I just want you to see as I plug in these numbers what happens. So the tax rates do change, and they do vary based on what a player makes. But what you can see here is how cool this tool is. You can see all the tax rates. And what you can even do, if you're interested in such things, is pick any teams you want, and you can see the difference in taxation that certain players will make in certain jurisdictions. So if you ever wanted to, you guys can play around with this on your own. It's a pretty cool tool, and it will help you understand a lot about the ramifications of taxes. So the lowest overall tax rate, as you may already know, is your teams in Florida, Vegas, Nashville, Seattle, and Dallas, because there are no state taxes, it's just federal taxes. Now, there are variables based on how much is earned. There's tax brackets, as I was showing you. And then the NHL and states kind of do a little thing, well, mostly the states, where if you go play a game in California, but you're actually from Texas, everyone wants to take a piece, and they take a piece that way. What I'm going to show is here on this graph is the teams that are over 49% tax rate, which is basically Canada. Edmonton and Calgary and Alberta aren't too far behind from there. And most of the teams all the teams sit between this 36.58, and the Rangers, I believe, are 54% themselves. So let's look at the top 11 contracts by total cash value, or value total, not by average annual value. Austin Matthews, 16.7. I'm not going to read them off. You can see it on the screen. And as we go down, you'll see what they're actually getting paid. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the top 5 highest paid contracts. So it's Matthews, McKinnon, Pettersson, Nylander, and Gensel. Now, before we move too much forward, I'll maybe take a second. You can maybe try and take a guess of, out of these 5 guys, who's actually going to be getting paid the most money. And that is not Austin Matthews. It is Nathan MacKinnon, because as you can see here where the tax rates are, his tax rate is lower in the state of Colorado. So he's actually number 1. And although Jake Guentzel sort of on paper makes less due to the tax rate, he actually makes more overall in what's called take-home pay, so your gross versus net. And then you have Pettersson and Nylander right there, as you guys can see. So the comparison to the lowest overall tax rate. So let's say we took all these guys and we just compared them to, let's say where Guentzel makes his money in Florida. So Matthews on an 8-year deal is going to pay $22 million more than he would pay in Florida. McKinnon's is 5.8, Pettersson let's call it 19 million, and Nylander almost 18 million. And what I did at the bottom actually is reversed it, just showing what Guentzel would be paying in taxes on an 8-year deal if he paid in Toronto versus where he plays, or he's going to be playing now in Tampa Bay. So you can see that's a substantial amount of money that a player has to think about. And again, along with those sales taxes and other components when they're signing a contract. So sometimes when people say it's a giant overpay compared to this, well, that's not the full story. Sometimes there's overpays. Everyone can think of a contract. You can probably think of 1 or 2 on the team that you root for, but this is how it's structured out. Or if we think of things like hometown discounts, sometimes it's not a player taking this giant discount that, and sometimes it is, but a lot of the times it's, it's the tax rate. So let's make this make sense. So if we take a $10 million deal, let's say in Vegas and Toronto, where the tax rates, as you can see, 36.5 to call it 53. If you do it at 10 and then you times it by 10, so let's say a player is going to sign a 8-year, $12.5 million deal per year. Whether you look at the AAV or the total salary cap, if a team has a cap, or the league has a cap of 100 million, that makes an effective advantage of $16.524 million. Now, just to get an idea as well moving forward, Edmonton's at, let's call it 48% tax versus, say, Florida. So if a guy like McDavid or anybody else wants to get a max deal, the max percentage, which would be that 17.6, then the difference in taxes paid is almost $2 million. So that's a lot of money. Now, what does that do for a team? So every team wants more defensemen. So this is what I'm going to take a look at here. And also on the side, what you can see is some very recent Stanley Cup champions, which is Vegas, Florida, and Tampa Bay. What do we know about those teams? And most often, what do we know about almost any NHL team that wins the cup? They usually have a Norris stud on the back end or a top 5 in the league D, but they also have, well-rounded out D from 1 to 6, usually even 1 to 4 that are fantastic. So, a guy like Forsling and whatnot. So these are some of the guys you can find this data on the internet and think to yourself, if my team had this amount of money, what type of guys, let's say any of these guys became free agents, what type of an upgrade of space, or if you even think about forwards, you want to look at that, how much, talent and depth that could afford you, or even just another star player on top of your already maybe star-studded roster. That's a lot of money. That's a huge advantage for some teams. So if we look at the past 7 or 8 Stanley Cup finals, we can see if there's any kind of advantage. And, the reality to me comes down that, yeah, there's a bit. And overall, in general, I think as the cap goes up and players get paid more, this is going to create more and more of an advantage. However, the main component for any team is the quality of the general manager, whether they can do their job. And so what we can see here is we have Nashville in 17, and Vegas made it. Boston and St. Louis, they have a little bit of a lower tax rate, but it's not crazy. It's not like Florida style. Then you can see Dallas and Tampa both know lower tax rates. Tampa Bay made it, and going back to that point I made about management and doing your job right, Montreal has one of the higher tax rates, and yet they made it through. And then you had Tampa and Colorado, lower tax rates once again. Vegas and Florida, the lowest rates. And then also you had Florida and Edmonton going at it. So Edmonton has a slightly lower rate than the highest, but you can kind of see a bit of a trend, but it's not impossible. Let's say the Rangers, played a little bit better. They have actually the highest tax percentage. So who knows? Maybe what could happen if they made it through. So there is this stigma or thought that people say nobody wants to play in Canada. I don't really buy it. However, weather, pressure, so things like players seeing what's happening to a guy like, let's say, Mitch Marner, where guys are fans are wanting to run the guy out of town. Maybe they don't want to play there, and taxes, those are a thing. There's also a difference in the taxation. You can write off the amount that you pay your agent pre-tax in the States versus Canada. And then, there's components like how much you can get. You can probably get acreage and a massive house in Texas and all kinds of cool things and a ranch versus, maybe a condo in BC or Ontario, something like that. Everyone talks about a Canadian team hasn't won a cup since '93. Let's think about the odds, though. Back in the day, it used to be 1-6. Now it's 1-32. So it is a lot tougher. And we have been fairly close. I say we, Canada, because that's where I'm from. So Vancouver's been there. Edmonton's been there a couple times. And, the Vancouver, both games, 7 losses. Edmonton had a game 7 loss. Calgary, that was a goal in that Tampa series. And Ottawa and Montreal have been there. So they've been there. They just kind of haven't gotten the job done. The real issue, as I've said, is management. So if you look at Dallas, Tampa Bay, and Florida, yeah, they do have a tax advantage, but there's not a whole lot of teams that are better at drafting, developing, signing, and trading than those teams. And in Canada, unfortunately, we've had a lot of mistakes that you can see over time. Whether you want to go back and look at St. Louis being put on waivers or Hull being traded. Toronto, it's endless the amount of things that they've done. Vancouver recently, Forsling or Neely in the past. And then you have Sergachev for Drought. So I think in Canada, the main issue is management. They got to be a little bit better and doing their signing, drafting, trading, and developing. There just seems to be a lot of holes. That being said, if you have more of that quote unquote advantage, you can paper over a lot more holes than you can in a high taxation bracket. So what would you do? Now, whenever I hear that, I think of Team America, so hence the picture. But sometimes when we think, oh, these guys are greedy or, there's no loyalty. Well, teams don't have a whole lot of loyalty. Like Vegas has no loyalty. And I think that's going to be a trend moving forward, as well as players aren't going to have as much loyalty moving forward because there's a lot more money involved. So you look at the percentages, but if you look at the total amount, that amount, that 22 million or 15 million or whatever, if the cap goes up and the salaries go up, that turns into a lot more money for the player over time. So they're going to be thinking long and hard about that as we go forward. So as is the title of the video, is LTIR really the problem? I don't know. I don't think so. I've never bought into that. Teams are always in LTIR. Your team's going to be in it one day. I look at Edmonton, Vegas. Everyone was whining about, when they played and Vegas went on. Now Edmonton's hoping for Kane. So the big issue is, the owners. It's always going to be an advantage that somebody wants. The lower tax guys are going to not be in favor of smoothing out some numbers versus the highest tax guys. Then you have to have all the owners vote on it and get it some sort of fairness resolution. Then there's the players, there's the CBA and the agents, and there's when we think about things, there's team friendly and tax friendly. So again, I talked about it. A lot of the times it's not so much team friendly, it's tax friendly. And hometown discounts do exist. Sometimes fans expect them, but we shouldn't. Sometimes players do sign them, but again, with those high taxation rates, it's a bit of a thing. So it really would mean a lot to me if you like and subscribe and maybe share this video. Again, it's my first video. I really had to work up the courage to do this. And if you're watching other creators and YouTubers do their thing, just know it takes a ton of time. I'd really appreciate it. If you can't really do that, put something in the comment section. Tell me how good I did. Tell me how bad I did, or in between, or what I might have been able to add, or what would have helped you. And I really thank you guys for watching. Hopefully we'll see you again soon, and I hope to make another video for you in the very near future. Thanks so much. Take care.